Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Cozy. I'm the founder of our organization, and I'm joining you from Miami, Florida. Before I introduce our guest speaker for the evening, I just wanted to give everybody a little background information on our organization. I'm prior military, and in 2017, I had to transition from overseas and start my life over from scratch. So I wanted to find a way to connect strong, like-minded individuals in an environment where we could really learn from each other's experiences and connect on a deeper level. So we launched our group in January of 2018 in Washington, D.C. It was a brunch event, hence the name. Since then, we've moved to happy hour, expanded to the West Coast, and now we're virtual. Our guest speakers have included everyone from relationship coaches to money managers to female founders and CEOs. And tonight we have yet another exceptional guest speaker, Sallay Kim. So Sallay served the US Army as an intelligence officer, where she exhibited a passion for detail execution and garnered an unprecedented amount of life experience while developing and executing galas, promotions, and military retirements. She's currently the director for Serenity Event Solutions, an independent disabled female veteran-owned business. And her commitment to service extends beyond her military experience in event planning, as she volunteers her time and efforts as a board member for the Miramar National Cemetery Support Foundation and San Diego's Distinguished Speaker Series Committee. Sallay obtained her bachelor's in business administration from Campbell University, and she's also a graduate of George Washington University's Master's of Tourism Administration program. Tonight, she's here to share her story of pursuit, perseverance, passion, and pivot. Sallay, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have you.
Likewise, Rachel, thank you so much for having me. Thanks to both you and Lynn for the opportunity. Really, really excited to be here, especially during these crazy times when things are just still so up in the air. It's good to just be able to connect with everybody. I am going to share my screen. As Rachel stated, I'll be talking about, this evening when the ladies reached out to me and asked me if I would speak, I thought, wow, what did I want my message to be? The fact that the Women's Empowerment Brunch is about women who share their stories, the ability to learn from one another. I wanted to be able to say, okay, what is it that I could share this evening that I would be able to impart some wisdom upon each of you tonight. And so I thought about it in terms of my life, pursuit, perseverance, passion, and pivot, and my journey to finding joy. There have been a number of tools that I've utilized to get to this point, and I'd really appreciate it if everybody, kind of thinking about how things that you've utilized to get to finding your joy, to finding the passion that you have in life, whether that tool is a book, a mantra, a saying, a mentality. Please utilize the chat box and share that there, and we'll have some time to talk about it afterwards, as well as do some Q&A. But I ask you, are you living your passion today? I don't proclaim to be an expert of any sort, but I do know that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And so with that, I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on who I am. My parents came to the States in 1970 with a wave of their friends, all came here from Sierra Leone, West Africa to get educated. And so I like to say I was born here by the skin of my teeth, really. I was born a US citizen, thankfully. I was I consider myself first generation American, the oldest of two younger sisters, or the three of us. And I just, my life, while it's come together very nicely now, things were very challenging back then. We were not well off. We were, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Sorry about that. I was raised as an African at home and going to school, learning how to be an African American, two totally different things, two very different cultures, which can get you kind of mixed up as you're growing up. But, you learn to let that become part of who you are. my parents ultimately divorced. Things were not good at home. And so it was just a very challenging childhood, but you persevere, right? Um, I was a really good student. I went to high school, graduated with honors, but when it was time for me to decide, okay, what is next in my path, I was the oldest of all of the cousins that were here in the States. And so I didn't really necessarily have that role model to help me figure out next steps. And while I applied to college, I was accepted and thought, oh, this is great. My 17-year-old brain could not wrap my head around the fact that I would have to pay for this. $5,000 at that point sounds like a lot of money when you're 17. The process itself was also something that was very overwhelming at that point. And so I remember seeing all of these Army commercials and thinking, okay, well, I can be all that I can be. And I joined the US Army at 17. I didn't know what my plan was at that point, other than I needed to pay for school. I needed to go to school to be successful. And so that's what I did, and hence began my pursuit. I have some photos here. This is my mom here on the bottom left-hand side. This is right before she came to the US in 1970, circa 71. As I mentioned, I was the oldest of all the cousins that were here. The wave of friends that came over, those became our cousins that we grew up with. Let's see, these are my two younger sisters here, Katie and Ice. They're both in the medical field, the nursing field, and they are accomplished in their own rights. My sister right behind me, Katie, she is a Army nurse, has her doctorate in nursing. This is me graduating from high school. As you can see, I was very excited, even though I had no idea what was coming next. And this was essentially here our family unit at that point. The four of us. This is who I lived for. This is why I joined the Army. I realized I just couldn't put a financial debt on my mom's head, knowing that she had two younger ones to take care of. So hence began my pursuit. Pursuit is described as the action of following or pursuing someone or something. And in this case, the Army was my something. I went off to basic training in AIT. Basic training is where you learn how to become a soldier. You learn how to march. You learn drill and ceremony, basic rifle marksmanship. You learn how to be a soldier, all the fundamentals. I went off to AIT where I became an imagery analyst. So here I had this new skill set. I knew how, I was disciplined. I knew a skill. I went off to Fort Bragg, and this was during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And so here I am working shift work as an imagery analyst, putting all my newfound skills to work. And it was a very unique time. I like to say that I grew up twice. The first time at home in Silver Spring, Maryland, but the second time it was these initial years right here in the Army. I learned so many different lessons. I learned how to be independent, financially responsible. I learned how to be a young woman in the world on my own, discipline, responsibility, dependability. I learned leadership, how to follow, how to be a valuable team member. Physical fitness became a habit. I ran races, competing in biathlons and 10 milers. I learned hard work, how to be confident and overcome fear. I had a valuable skill set in the intelligence field, and I formed lifelong relationships with people to this very day that I can call on at any time, moment's notice, anywhere in the world, and we can reconnect like time hadn't passed at all. I'm reminded right now, we are watching a lot of sports these days. So happy to have them all back on, right? But with sports comes commercials. And at this moment, there are a lot of those My Military commercials. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's the ones where you'll see a son or daughter in their element in the military doing a mission, and their parent is following beside them in their in their house robe saying, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And the son or daughter will say, Absolutely. I'm a valuable member of the team. I'm making a great impact on this world." And every time I see those commercials, I get all teared up because this was me. Not that I necessarily needed to convince my mom that this is what I was going to do. I didn't even know all those things were going to happen, but the fact that young people today are seeing the value of military service and convincing their parents that it's a great place for them to be. As I kind of list all the things I learned in the service, that commercial always kind of comes to mind, because it's truly touching and very true. From there, from Fort Bragg, I went to Mainz, Germany, where I was stationed. This is where I would become a non-commissioned officer. I picked up a lot of new tasks, a lot of additional duties, because when you're the youngest of all the NCOs, they like to push stuff on you. And so this was also one of the very first times that I was now homesick. Here I am, I think I was 19 at the time, and I miss mom's cooking, her West African peanut butter stew. I, I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna make this. I'm just gonna call home, ask mom, how do I make this? Mom didn't have a recipe because she just cooks a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so my first few times making the stew were a bad science experiment at best. But, you learn over the years. That was really just my first foray into learning how to cook on my own, cooking things that you didn't necessarily find in a recipe book. But again, it was also that time where I was learning how to juggle many skills, many different responsibilities at the same time. So it was a really fun first overseas, away from home, experience for me. Um, I learned the art of planning, albeit unconventional, whether it was uh, going to the field, airborne operations, military ceremonies. You really become a part of all of those things. I learned how to maintain a 5-year plan. A 5-year plan is a great way for young people to excel, because if you set a goal for 5 years and you're also putting together a plan for how you achieve those goals 1 year at a time, one step at a time, you really start to see that every day you're making some type of progress, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to go to college and get my degree in 5 years, and then you don't sign up for any classes, right? So the 5-year plan was one of the tools that I utilized that really made me think and act and execute the way that I needed to become successful. I went to college religiously while working full time, one class at a time. I deployed, I saw the world, I learned, um, I got educated in life and in school, just day to day. Back stateside, it was kind of time for me. I was at a crossroads. I'd made the rank of staff sergeant, and I just knew in my career field that it would be really difficult for me to get to the next rank of, a senior non-commissioned officer, because people weren't retiring, and the military is based on numbers. And so, with that said, I thought, okay, it's time for me to consider something else. What is that something else? And I thought about going green to gold, which is another military program where you can become an officer by going off to school, getting your education, and then kind of coming back into the service. The other option was OCS, Officer Candidate School. And Officer Candidate School was turned out to be quite the experience. If you've ever seen an officer and a gentleman, which I know is a bit dated, but it's so true. Every moment, well, most moments in that movie, I can absolutely relate to. I became an officer and a gentlewoman, I like to say, but they tear you down to build you back up. So here I was, the staff sergeant. I ruled my troops. I took care of them, and then I go to this school. I learned all these things, and they kind of take that away from you. You don't wear any rank. You don't. Um, you're under other people, but it almost as if you don't know anything is how they treat you. And so it was a really challenging time, and I always remember I had one phone call a week that I could make like I was in jail. And I remember calling my mom, and every time she'd say, that doesn't kill you, will only make you stronger." And I knew she was proud. She was proud of me. I'm I'm glad that I spoke to her during those times because she made it more palatable for me to stay and work through this. I knew I could do it, but sometimes you just need a little encouragement, a little pat on the back to say, "You got this. You've got this." So that was really beautiful. I went off to the engineer corps after that. So I'd moved from military intelligence into the engineer corps. And at the time, I remember being really upset about it because and Intel is what I knew at that point. I was really good at it. I had all these friends in the field. I knew what I was doing every day, and it felt good to be a part of that work, that branch. But what I realized soon after, and maybe it was a few years after, was that in terms of expanding who I was to become and the skill set that I was to gain, that's what the engineer corps did for me. I had a topographic platoon. We made maps. And so I did have some experience in that because I had been in imagery intelligence. But I also learned program management. I learned how to turn in obsolete equipment. This was like an arduous process, but it was obsolete engineering equipment that had to be turned back in that hadn't been done by anybody before. And here I was, this brand new butter bar. That's what you call fresh lieutenants in the Army, but just getting things done, making it happen. And so, and then being exposed to combat arms as well. Here I'd been in the intelligence field. We're kind of soft in the intel field, and you go to the engineering corps, the engineer corps, and everybody's, they're sappers and combat arms, and just gives you a different exposure. And so that was really lovely for me to see. But you have to know, at this point, I thought I'd had it made. I went back to school. I finished up my college degree. I had a bachelor's. I was a captain. I was on my own, financially responsible for myself. I had it made. I had arrived, but that wasn't it. I put in to go back to military intelligence because it's really where I wanted to excel. And going back into the intelligence field, they send you back to school. I was at the captain's career course at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, so it felt like home again. And this was a great time for me because it's one of the few times in the Army where you're with your peers and you can, really kind of relax. You're going to school, you don't have a lot of responsibilities, and things are really great. And this is where I met my husband, Tay, and most of you know him. The experience itself was pretty amazing. Thank you. Was pretty amazing, but that's a whole nother story. That could take, a number of events for us to kind of get through and talk through. But I will tell you that I knew at that point that he was going to be part of my joy. Fast forward just a little bit, I went off to Korea. 9/11 happened. I'd been in Korea all of 30 days when this happened. And essentially, you're still just catching up to what you need to do. You're getting signed into your unit, and then the world fell apart. Um, it was a challenging time. It was, again, one of those times where I was really far away from home. All of this had happened in New York and DC and Pennsylvania, and I wasn't even able to get in touch with my family for at least 48 hours. All the lines were down in DC. But you persevere as a soldier, right? You just got to get things done. And so the mission was taking care of the troops, taking care of the unit, making sure that things were, they continued to go along course. And so that's what I did. I also commanded while I was out there, had a 130 person company. And the beautiful thing about the military is the entire time that you're in, they are teaching you, building you up to be a leader, to lead troops. And it's the ultimate task, being in company command, taking any type of command. And so I relished in it. I relished in the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. And that was about almost 2 years. And then I moved back to the States. And at this point, life was really kind of moving fast because I had maybe another 5 or so years left in the military. And that 5-year plan was coming back into effect. And maybe it was a little bit longer, but at this point, I ended up deploying to Iraq. Tay and I got married afterwards. I got assigned to a really unique and prestigious unit in the DC area. And I realized, okay, it's time for me to figure out what my next step is going to be. The intelligence field is great. I would be able to get a job in the DC area, no problem. But I knew that it ultimately wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so this great book over here, What Should I Do with My Life by Poe Bronson, I have to tell you, was the workbook that set me up for success. And I've recommended this book to a number of friends that are considering transitioning. And that's essentially where I was. I was looking at a second career. I was not sure. I knew that Intel wasn't what I wanted to do, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I used this book as a workbook to figure out my strengths, my weaknesses, what I liked to do, what I didn't like to do. And I realized I loved organization. I loved planning. I relished in planning. Most people don't particularly care for planning, but it was that thing that really spoke to me. And so with all the unconventional experiences that I'd had at that point, I realized, okay, maybe I've got to go back and get some schooling. And so I went back to school and I got a master's in event management. Um, but as I was doing that, I wanted to share. I know I said this was a whole story into it in itself, but I wanted to share some photos of this guy, this special guy who has really helped me along my journey. And even at that point, when I was looking and reading through this book and trying to figure out what I was going to do next and going back to school, he was there talking me through it, laying out some plans, helping me figure out, helping us figure out what our next steps were going to be post-military. And so it was just a beautiful thing. So I retired, I left the service, and I have to tell you, this is where things got a little icky. So perseverance is defined as persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. And I think one of those things that most military people will tell you, especially those that have served for a number of years, is that you have this beautiful structure around you. You have support, you have family. Everywhere that you go, you're in uniform. Your name is on your jacket, who you belong to, what units you belong to, things that you've accomplished. People see you and they know, oh, there she is. That's Major Kim. When you leave the service and you become a civilian, it's a whole nother ballgame. And not only was I leaving the service and becoming a civilian where I walk into a room full of strangers and I'd have to go and talk to people and tell them who I was and what I could be or who I was inside. I also was starting a new career field. So a new career field, a whole new world. I had to figure out what was what. I was fortunate enough in being able to start off as an entrepreneur. One of the things that I kind of look back on now and say to myself is, perhaps I should have started with a company first. But that's all hindsight, right? Um, but it got off to a great start. I started Serenity Event Solutions, event planning company, planning what I thought at the time would be classified conferences. I had the clearance, I had the background. I just put together a contract, submitted one. I received it and I thought, wow, we're off to a great start. This is amazing. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. Well, That was not to be. That contract, while it came through, the security clearance process was so convoluted. I ended up losing that contract. So now the thought was, okay, how do I fill this this void? I now have no work. What am I going to do? And so I started finding other small businesses and nonprofit organizations that needed event planning services. So it was off to a slow start, but Serenity was working. It was going. And then we decided, now that we were no longer in the military, retired, it's time to live where we want to live. It'll be the first time that we are moving to a place where the Army didn't push us or assign us to, not push us to, assign us to. And so we get there, we get to San Diego because this is where we ultimately decided to be. And I realized, wow, okay, this Serenity thing, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to continue to work? I'd have to start all over again. I took about 6 months to get us settled here, get us acclimated. And I realized at that point, wow, if I don't do something soon, I'm going to drive my husband crazy. I've got to figure out if Serenity is going to be um, the route for me. And so I thought back to a time when we were in Greenville, South Carolina. My sister-in-law lived there at the time. And when I don't know if you've been down there, but it's such a beautiful downtown area. And they have all of these little sayings stamped into the road, into the pavement. And one of the sayings was something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for. And I remember this because I saw it, I stopped, and then I thought, I've got to remember that one. That's a really good one. And I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I kept it at my desk. And so from the moment that I transitioned from the service up through this time that we'd gotten to San Diego, I had this little piece of paper in my desk that I'd always look at. And as I was making that determination as to what I wanted to do about Serenity, I knew that Serenity was my something to do, and I needed to get back on it. And so that's what I did. Um, I had again a lot of support from Tay. We talked through it, you know, understanding that it was going to be a difficult task starting all over again in San Diego, but just kind of jumping in again, both feet, meeting people, acclimating myself to my surroundings, and just getting out there. I spent the next 2 years just getting to know San Diego. And before you knew it, everything else was coming together. And so, hence, I get to my passion. It's just defined as a strong and barely controllable emotion. And this is where I am today, or I would say pre COVID. This is where I am today. So, Serenity, with each task, we pick up more and more experience. Um, we help our clients from start to finish with an idea, a concept, all the way through execution. And, we'll do an after action review and kind of talk through what could have made this so much better. And so I started off with smaller events, but now, whether it's a gala, multi-day conference, a charity walk, you name it, we're doing it. And so I've got a great team that helps me execute whenever it comes time. I do most of the planning myself, but I love working with my clients. I've gained so much confidence over the years, and I'm able to lead them from start to finish. Most things don't phase me in terms of planning, in terms of executing a larger event. I think it would have to be extremely out of my realm for me to just kind of to 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 be knocked off kilter, if you will. So really have grown over the years. We're 10 years later, and I must say that I'm truly living my passion, doing what I love, because I don't feel like I work, despite all of the details and the items that it takes to pull off an event. There are a number of other things that I haven't even touched on. This was just getting us to doing what I love and that passion that I feel each day. I really think that it's important that you always have somebody there um, that you can share your journey with. Tay and I have been married 15 years this week, and so it's been really beautiful having selected the right person for me, the person that compliments me, and I believe I compliment him rather well, and then just sharing our journey together and making it, you know, the world that we want it to be. This is our puppy Milo. Although he is dressed up for Halloween, he does not like to get dressed up for Halloween. The other thing that we do, or that I do, is community service. You know, when you leave the service, the military, you start thinking about ways that you can continue to be a part of your community. And as women, sometimes it's really difficult for us to say no, but I was able to combine two things to make life good for me. As an event planner, people really want me to sit on their boards and do their events for them for free, which is not a bad thing, but in order to cut down on the number of events that required that of me, I found that, you know, I could commit to 2 to 3 community events or community organizations that I could be a part of, that I could dedicate my time to. And then when people do ask me for event planning services, I tell them, sure, no problem. And I present them with the proposal. Those It's been really nice to just establish those boundaries because it had gotten out of control for a while there. And it's just so hard to say no sometimes. So I serve on the Miramar National Cemetery Support Foundation. Here, it's a beautiful national cemetery that we help beautify. This here tower, the Caroline Tower, is one of the projects that we did there. It's the Avenue of Flags out at Miramar, also a project that we did. And we host Memorial Day and Veterans Day events there each year. This gentleman here is General Cardenas. He's one of the original founders of the Support Foundation, but he's also part of the flight crew that broke the sound barrier with Chuck Yeager in the Air Force back in the day. So he's a pretty cool gentleman to know and be around. Military and Transition Firefighter for a Day is one of those organizations that really touches my heart. Uh, Having transitioned from the military, knowing how difficult it can be, being a part of this organization is great. We help military members move from the military to becoming a firefighter, whether it's working in dispatch or actually becoming a firefighter. We help them with education and their career path. And so that's been a lot of fun too. And then I also like to help support other friends as well. This 17-mile walk was for suicide prevention a couple of years ago. My feet hurt so much after that, but it was for such a good cause and it was great to be a part of it. Our family and friends mean the world to us. I may have mentioned that my mom, early on in my military career, remarried. My dad is intelligent, loving, very supportive, and he's a great example of what a father and a good husband should be. Um, we stay connected. That we stay connected with our family. We have 14 nieces and nephews. They are some of our something to hope for, you know, on my mantra. We have 4 nieces or 4 godchildren as well. The ability to just stay connected, to help them, to be mentors to them has been quite the experience, knowing that we didn't necessarily have that ourselves growing up. Our friends from all over have been extremely supportive, and we've been there to support them. A rather diverse group of individuals, all really passionate and accomplished in their own rights. And it's been just a pleasure to have that circle of friends. I read once that your 5 closest friends are a true representation of who you are. This was when I was a bit younger and I realized I had to clean up my act. So in doing so, I find that I'm surrounded by amazing women and men that support me and that I'm able to support as well. So one of the things that I like to do is be very deliberate about my friendships and making sure that people that I know one another, because when you're that good, everybody should know who you are. And so one of the years more recently, I did these are my favorite, a few of my favorite things, because Sound of Music is one of my favorite musicals, but a few of my favorite things where I shared the things that I love to do with the women that I love to be around. And not only did I share these activities with them, but I also brought in experts, good friends of mine that were able to lead these events. And so some of them include boxing and Bellinis, which was so much fun. Everybody should have a Bellini after they box. It's just really refreshing. We did some charity walks. I have a fantasy football league of women called the League of Our Own. And not everybody knows, a lot about football, but over the years we've learned quite well. They've learned quite a bit. I'm a sports fiend. I don't know if I mentioned that. But it's just been really good to help bring along some of my girlfriends and then just play against each other and talk a little trash as well. Makeup and margaritas, wine, and I like to say wine and paint. Oh, no, I normally say wine and vino, but it was wine and paint. And that was a lovely time too. So just being deliberate about that. Tay and I love to travel. We love exploring the world, one crevice at a time, whether we're meeting friends in locations, family somewhere, or just going out and figuring out a new place. What's to see here? Where should we go? What should we do? And so that's been a lot of fun exploring the world with him. I really enjoy exercising. I did not put a slide of that in here. You did not need to see me sweating, but boxing is one of my favorite things to do, as well as cycling. But then this is where we're all at right now. We're at this pivot. Pivot is defined as turn on or as if on a pivot. COVID in March really changed all of our worlds. And for me, I thought near immediately, what am I going to do? In-person events are never going to happen again. So with that said, life had other plans, because while those in-person events for Serenity were all canceled, a new world was opening up. I think I've explained, every time I do a new event, I learn something new or add a new skill set. And here I was thinking, the company, is time to shut it down. And yet I became a virtual production director. So these are just some examples of the events that I've hosted online, utilizing different platforms, whether it involved avatars. There are certain people that would be in the room, but for the most part, everybody else is sitting where you are in a Zoom call or in some fashion virtual. And it's been mind blowing. And but still being able to connect with the world has been really good. I had a sense of, oh, what would the world be? Every night during COVID here in San Diego, everybody went out onto their balconies and they're banging pots and pans and they're applauding the healthcare workers. And I was feeling really bad, thinking, well, what am I doing for my community right now? What can I do? And so one of the things that we were able to do is there's a local food drive that serves veterans in Oceanside through the Veterans Association of North County. And so now once a month I go up and I help pass out food or organize food so that we can pass it out to over 450 families, veteran families, each month. Our Memorial Day event went virtual. We partnered with the USS Midway, Rosecrans National Cemetery, as well as Mount Soledad Veterans Memorial, to do a YouTube streamed Memorial Day event here in San Diego. And it was nationwide, actually. So that was pretty cool. And then just doing our virtual fundraising gala online too. So that worked out well for in terms of continuing to figure out how to be a part of the community. Our family, we've been unable to visit all of our family on the East Coast. And so we started themed Zoom calls where we would get dressed up. I did not post those photos because I think the family would be a little upset with me right now. But we did have some themed Zoom calls, and it just allowed us to check in on everybody, see how everybody was doing, and making sure that we're all okay. And that's been really good on both sides. And so I've shared a number of little things that have helped me to find my joy. And with COVID, there was a lot of extra time to think about things that you could do or wanted to do or didn't have time to do before that you can do now. And so one of the things that I did was started making my mom's recipes, making my mom's food into recipes. And so looking at ways that I can convert that into a way to share food with everybody, as well as working on a cookbook that celebrates the Korean culture and our West African culture, as well as some of the recipes, American dishes that my mom made when we were children growing up. But all of these items here have really helped me find the keys to my success, and happiness being that key. Actually, this workbook, as I mentioned before, that I continue to send out to lots of friends that are just at that point where they're not quite sure what it is that they want to do, was truly a turning point for me in my life. And then, of course, meeting this guy. But I'm certain that all of you have some thoughts in terms of things that have made you successful and what you have done up until now. But I do want to say I really appreciate, again, Rachel and Lynn, for you having me here tonight and allowing me to share my story. And what I'd love now is for us to kind of talk about some of those things that you've all used to be successful in your own right. Trying to get to the top here. We watched Sound of Music today. Thanks, Greg. That's such a fabulous movie. We even went to Austria to check out the movie site a couple of years ago. Hi, Bettina.
Oh, I just couldn't believe you said that. We literally watched it at our house this evening with the.
Oh, that is such a perfect movie.
I'm totally off topic, but
No. It's wonderful. How is everybody? So good to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
absolutely.
Let me see. I'm trying to maneuver.
Yeah, Sallay, we have a question from Tammy. If Tammy, you want to unmute?
Hi, Tammy. Oh, be better than you were the day before. I like that one, Tammy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's perfect.
It keeps me going.
Tammy was my very first platoon leader in Germany, way back in the early 90s.
In the old days.
In the old days. Yes, that is a great mantra to live by. Be better than you were the day before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, it keeps me going. So I do have one question, Sallay. I would like to
Sure.
know if there's anything that you would have done differently in your life, that you've, not that you've had a regret or anything, but just, is there something that you would have done differently?
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that because Tay asked me, this might be a question that you get. And the one thing I would say I would have done differently is in that perseverance portion where I left the military and I was transitioning to becoming a civilian. I think I should have gone with the company before jumping in and becoming an entrepreneur. I should have learned how to become an event planner officially, like everybody else does it, versus just figuring it out on my own based on what I'd done previously and what I'd learned in school. So I would say I could have made life less difficult for myself by just learning from others? That's a great question. Thank you so much, Tammy.
He's a smart man.
He is a smart man. He is. It's been really good being able to bounce things off of him as an entrepreneur, because he had started off 3 or 4 years before, prior to me leaving the service. And so just having that, being able to have that conversation with a mentor right there whenever you want is great.
Well, I really appreciate you inviting me to this, and thank you, Tay. And so you guys have a wonderful night. I'm probably gonna bail, but I love you guys. You guys are
Love you too, sweets. Thanks.
Bye.
Were Tay and I deployed together? Yes, we were deployed to Iraq together. He was in Baghdad and I was just south in Hilla. I was serving with the Coalition Provisional Authority down there. And Tay answered in 2003. It was 2003. Serenity rules. Oh, thanks for the anniversary, love. Peanut butter stew for everybody, not the science experiment. It's actually been perfected. I just need to get in touch with a food person to figure out the best way to package it and send it out, but it is near ready. It's been tested with all the family. I've sent it to all the family on the East Coast. My sisters stated that it tastes like mom's. Mom hasn't been able to taste it just yet. My parents live overseas and they're in Guinea, which is a neighboring country to Sierra Leone. And so she hasn't been able to taste it just yet, but I know that when she gets here to the States, she may give her thumb of approval. The cookbook is coming along. Some of the other recipes that I still have to work through to make sure that they're authentic, that they taste authentic. But the concept is coming along pretty well. The outline of the book itself, I'm thinking it's more like, it's not just a cookbook, it's a story about our lives, our families. I have a sister-in-law who raised 3 magnificent young children. And I keep telling her, I want to help you write your book. And she says, no, I'm not going to write a book, but I want to dedicate one of the chapters to her and some of the things that she's instilled upon her children to make them as successful as they are, while also incorporating some of the recipes that she likes to cook too. So just a different type of cookbook, but a lot of fun. Send us the recipe. Kim, I'm actually going to have to send you the actual packet with the instructions on how to make it. Marla, you made it. Thank you. You loved it. Okay. Nice. Will do.
Not only did I love it, my family loved it as well.
Yay. This is my very dear friend, Marla. Marla is one of our good friends here in San Diego that we met soon after transitioning. It's amazing where you meet wonderful women. And for us, one of my favorite stories here in San Diego is my hairstylist introduced me to a lot of amazing women. So Marla's one of them. Thanks for joining us tonight, sweets.
Sallay, Naomi has her hand raised. If you have a question. Naomi.
Oh, I can't see, please. Can anyone hear me?
We can't hear you, Naomi.
Try again. I think you're on now. No, you just muted yourself.
Yeah, I have
There you go.
a mic here that obviously is not working. So my question is, I transitioned about 5 years ago, 2015, and I still feel I'm in a state of transition. I too identify with the blessing of an Army uniform telling our story. especially Army, because we wore all our scary badges and we walked into a room and everybody knew, right?
Yeah.
You did some stuff. As a civilian, I'm actually supporting the Army Corps of Engineers right now, headquarters CIO
Wow.
G6. And I feel like I have to explain myself over and over again. I'm just like, don't you guys know?
Right.
You struggle with that, just establishing yourself
I
over and over
used to.
again every time you walk into a room, a
I
boardroom.
used to. And one of the beautiful things about San Diego is once you kind of establish yourself, people know who you are, and they're recommending you to, it's a very small town. Like it's a big town, but it's got small town feel. And we've been here now about 8 years. And I would say that I don't necessarily feel like that anymore. In fact, when I walk into a room, I'll tell you who I am. And it's just over time that you start to feel that that sense of belonging in the civilian sector, and you just get out of your head. We're so programmed to be who we were in the military, but letting go of that, because everybody else doesn't feel like that. Why do we feel like that? Oh, because we've always been told, you're great, I know who you are, I know your name, I know what you've done. And now we're just in a different we're operating in a different environment. So I would say, get out of your own head. If you have to say that you were in the service, because that does make people feel or understand you in a different light, do so. But just, you've got to kind of let that all go, the former life that you lived, and just be you, confident in who you are, and move forth. People will see it.
And I think we have time for one more question from your husband.
What's up, Mr. Kim?
Well, your husband certainly sounds like a wonderful man.
He's amazing.
Yes. And you know what? He'd be the first one to tell you that you are strong, independent, powerful, and you could hold it down on your own. And I introduce you as my better 70% all the time. So thank you for sharing your story with us. I just wanted to kind of ask you, I'm sure everybody's kind of going through the same thing, during COVID, when you're home, when you're stuck with your husband the whole time. What are some of the things that you're currently doing to decrease the stress? I know Rachel over there is sipping on some wine. We should be doing that at the moment.
Oh, yes, we should be. So I love to exercise, even more so now than I thought before. I cycle about 5 times a week, and it's great because I can have my friends join me. So that's been really good. I play golf with some of my golf girlfriends here, just catching up, socially distant lunches, just operating in our new norm. What do you do?
I drink daily, you know this.
Ah,
I think there was one more. I'm going to slip in one more question from the chat.
sure.
Apologize. I'm going to try to pronounce your name. Gervais?
Gervais.
She asked, Army soldier, Army officer, wife, fur mommy, entrepreneur, what's next?
So I kind of mentioned some of my what's next in the cookbook and the cooking. I really enjoy cooking. I love being in the kitchen. I love chopping and making something delicious to eat. And so I think that's really where I'm headed next, besides all of this virtual reality world that I'm working in, and discovering something new every day. I think that would be it. The cookbook, the finding someone to help me make these recipes, something that can go to stores and be put on shelves, or however that's going to be. So thanks, Gervais. Gervais is another one of my Army girlfriends from the past that is a dear friend of mine still to this day. So thanks for the question, Gervais.
So I just want to make sure that we wrap everything up on time. Sallay, thank you so much for your time. You're an exceptional woman. I really appreciate you
Thank
sharing your
you.
story with our entire group. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. If you want to learn about more of our events, you can visit empoweredwomenbrunch.com. Also, a special shout out to my moms. It's her birthday today.
Happy birthday, Mom!
For Pennsylvania, and she hasn't seen her family since Christmas. So I love you, Mom. Happy birthday. And last but not least,